Hello there. I want to talk about, I want to title this like a revised shelter or whatnot, but basically it's just a revision of the way I think of shelter. Um, I'm trying to create a pack that I can carry with me most of the time. Okay. And the pack that I've chosen out of monetary considerations is this. This is basically a child's book pack. You can see it's not super thick. It's fairly deep enough, I think. But I mean, this is what I've got. I want a better pack. Ain't happening right now. Okay. So the way that I load this pack and carry this pack might change over time. So this is where we're at. But this is basically the same components that were in my bedroll shelter video 6 or 8 months ago, whatnot. The only thing missing from it is I had a 9 by 12 uh, nylon tarp like you would buy at Lowe's or Harbor Freight. That's where mine came from. It was a 9 mil uh, tarp that you would use for like um, dragon leaves and things like that in your yard. You know, kind of like the blue tarp, except mine was just silver with the brown interior. You know what I'm talking about. That was going to go over top of me. It was going to be cover against rain and stuff like that. But honestly, it's too big and too bulky. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to come up with a shelter system that's as light as I can possibly get it, but that will do the job for 4 seasons. This particular kit that I have here, minus one component, is going to get me through spring, summer, and about mid-fall until the temperatures start dropping in the low 40s and below. Okay. But what it consists of is this netting material. It's camo because that's what I found, and that will help me to manage bugs. When I set up my shelter, whether I set it up in a plow point or a lean-to configuration, this will go over it so that it will keep the bugs off of me as much as possible. Here in Virginia, the undergrowth can be like this blooming tall, and it can be really thick. And there's a serious problem with bugs in the first 3 seasons of the year. Till you start hitting winter, there's a serious problem with bugs. So this netting is important to me. I almost left it out, and then I'm thinking, no, if I've got to live through the night in a survival situation, the last thing that I need is 5 million bug bites all over my face and my body. And this is an important part of the shelter. And then that is like a top layer of the shelter. It'll go over the shelter once I have it set up. Okay. The cover, what will go over my head, will consist of a 5 by 7 emergency mylar blanket. It's the reinforced kind. It's not just that thin mylar. It's got the woven mylar. I don't know if you can see that or not. That will act as shelter over top of my head, but it will also act as a reflector for a fire. So that if I need a fire, this will reflect the heat back onto me. In the summertime, if it's super hot, I could possibly turn this over and put this side to me, and this might reflect any heat off of me. I don't know. I don't know that that would matter. Okay, but that'll be my cover. Okay, my main cover. Excuse me, this got ugly looking for some reason. That'll be my main cover over top of my head. Will be this. Okay? So, after that, what I have is an old Marlboro, the label. I want to show you the label so you see. An old Marlboro sleeping bag. These, Marlboro used to sell these, yeah, Marlboro cigarettes, okay? Or you could, when I was a boy, you could buy the cigarettes and they gave you, on the cigarette pack, you would have a little stamp, just like green, remember S&H green stamps? I know a lot of you don't know what I'm talking about, but they were a thing back in the day. And you could save enough of them that you got points, and points counted for money on their site. Well, not on their site, but on in their catalog, because there wasn't any internet back then. And you could get, if you bought enough packs of cigarettes and saved the stamps, you could get this for free, basically, because you're already smoking the cigarettes, right? That kind of deal. And so this is not a really cold weather sleeping bag. This is like 50 degrees sleeping bag, something like that. It's not very much at all. It's a warm weather bag. But when you start talking about survival, and listen, I mean spring and summer and fall, this would be almost all I need. In the fall, I could make a small fire, and if it was a little bit cool in the night, that would suffice. All of this would suffice, including the sleeping bag. But in the winter, if I was going to crawl up into this bag without fire, okay, and this reflector, and think that I'm going to survive, I'm going to freeze to death. But, you know, I didn't go out and buy a 10-degree sleeping bag or a 20 below sleeping bag or whatnot. You know, I didn't get the military bag that's supposed to keep you alive for you know, in extreme cold and all that. Why? It was probably way too much than I'm willing to carry. That's another thing with that bag. Hopefully I can find a way to strap this to the bottom of that bag, because I don't think that it will fit into that bag and be useful to me. I don't think that I would have any room to put anything else in that bag that I need, because on top of everything else that I want in that bag, I'd like to carry a camera and a lens or two and spare batteries, that kind of thing. But anyway, so it's important for it to be as light as possible. So in the wintertime, with the reflective qualities of the Mylar, if I set this up in like a plow point configuration and built a fire far enough from me where it wouldn't melt anything, but close enough to me that I could get reflection off of this, the Mylar portion of this, then I would survive, provided that I understand that in cold weather, layers is the way to survive. Different layers of clothing that can trap air between them. You don't want skin tight, okay? So that you have insulation. And this sleeping bag would just be another layer of insulation. It wouldn't be, this is going to get me through the night. I would need fire, and I would need the rest of this stuff, and I would need proper layers. I wouldn't take all these clothes off and crawl up in this sleeping bag and expect to survive a winter night. Okay? So I believe, from what I understand about how I move around in the woods and around in this area in the cold weather months, that with proper layering and a fire and this reflective material, that I probably would have a really good chance of surviving overnight. I wouldn't be comfortable, but I wouldn't freeze to death. But now, what if the temperatures drop like 20 degrees or under? Well, in those cases, then I would add like a plastic sheeting of some type. I'm probably going to go down to like Harbor Freight and spend $5 on like a plastic 8 by 10 or 8 by 12 or 10 by 12 or whatever, um, clear plastic, what they call a drop cloth for painting, just a cheap painter's drop cloth. And what I would do with that is create an A-frame with this reflective material facing toward me and close that in with that plastic sheeting. And what I would do is build a fire in front of that and basically create what's known as a super shelter. And basically all that is doing is creating a hothouse environment within that shelter. There are a couple of reasons why I would not do it unless the temperatures were really going to be cold. And the first one is carbon monoxide. If you close yourself into that plastic thing and create that hothouse environment and you're not actively venting, you couldn't sleep in that. Because if you went to sleep and the carbon monoxide built up, you would die. Okay, you'd go to sleep and you'd never wake up. So you're going to have to vent it time to time. There's also a danger because of carbon monoxide buildup of falling asleep like early in the morning and suffocating that way. Okay. Also, you know, those temperatures are going to get high, like 90 degrees or more inside that shelter. And you might say, well, that's awesome. That rocks. You know, I could survive a winter and be nice and toasty. Well, you could, but you've also got condensation because this is plastic sheeting. You've also got the fact that if you get too hot in your clothing, your inner layers are going to get wet and you're going to have to go out of that shelter time to time at night to keep that fire going. Okay. So you're going to be coming in and out. And if you get soaking wet and you keep coming in and out, you could catch pneumonia, you could go hypothermic, particularly like if you spent the night there and got soaked. And you got up in the morning, you expect to have a headache because you are going to deal with a little bit of carbon monoxide no matter what you do in that environment. Okay. You're going to get up, you're going to feel like crap, you're going to be freezing cold, you're going to be soaking wet, and if it's cold enough, and it don't really have to be that cold if your inner layers are wet, the 40s is good enough to give you hypothermia in that situation. And you're trying to crawl out of the woods, soaking wet. It's just, those shelters are meant for environments like the Antarctic and places where it's really freaking cold all the time. Okay? In Virginia, that would be my last resort. It would be something that I would use when I knew the temperatures were so low that no matter what happened, I couldn't survive. Now, I'll tell you a little secret. If you build a big enough fire, you can survive. It doesn't matter. You could survive if you build a fire that's, you know, coming off the ground 5 feet, 6 feet, okay? And you stick close to that and keep that sucker burning, you can sit in front of that fire all flipping night if you want to without anything kind of shelter. You're going to survive. Okay, so that brings me to another thing. In this shelter kit, I have a few things that pertain to this shelter that I'm probably never going to drag out unless I need to build a shelter. And the first thing to that is things like paracord. Some paracord. This is 50-foot paracord. And I can use this to erect a shelter so that, you know, string it from trees or whatever to erect a shelter with. Okay. And then I have 4 metal tent stakes. I chose metal because a lot of times when the ground's frozen, you know, I've seen people, oh, they just include plastic. If that plastic stake is cold enough and you smack that thing with a rock, it's just going to bust. With these, you have to understand you need a pair of gloves because if they're super cold, they'll just stick to you and you'll be ripping skin off. Okay, so there are downsides to everything. I might keep a couple of plastic tent stakes in my pack as like a extras if I want them, but you can also, they're plastic. They're petroleum products. You can burn those suckers. If you need fire, that can be your fire starter. Okay? But I would also carry a large knife because in the woods, a lot of times I'm carrying a folding knife of some kind, a small pocket knife, something like that, or a buck 110, or one of those tactical folders, that kind of deal, something like that, because I don't really need a big honking fixed blade knife most of the time in the woods. I'm not going in the woods specifically to do bushcraft things. I'm a sportsman. I'm going in the woods to enjoy nature. So I'm not, the only reason I carry the shelter is because I recognize that it's possible I could sprain an ankle, break a hip, break a knee, and I might be able to get a shelter erected, but I'm not going to walk out of the woods and at the end of the day, before it gets so dark I can't see. Besides walking out around in the woods in the dark, there's all kind of dangers. I know you see all these guys, oh, we're going to travel at night through a forest. And okay, those guys are survival guys. They're ex-military. They're hoo-ah, gung-ho, and all that. You can walk around in the woods and just look, and you can see pieces of tree trunks and stuff that are laying on the ground, and they've got pieces of their limbs stuck up, and it's broke off, and it's just like a spear. But if you fall on that, good luck getting yourself off of that if it impales you and you don't die. Okay. So I'm not traipsing through the woods in the dark, stumbling around, tripping over stuff and stuff like that because I think I'm John Rambo, because I'm not. If it gets into a situation where it gets dark enough, I don't care if I got a headlamp on or anything like that, which I will be carrying in my backpack, by the way. Fat Boy is going to make shelter, and he's going to stay the night until he's got light to see by to get out safely. You can do whatever you want to. I'm just telling you that's going to be my thing. So in this shelter, I have those items. I also have an SOL mag striker. This is in addition to a ferro rod. This is a magnesium block, that's fire starting material, with a small ferro rod glued into it, and both of them glued into or embedded into a plastic blaze orange plastic handle with a blaze orange lanyard and a striker built in. So this is fire redundancy because I want guaranteed fire, and I'm going to get it one way or the other. I also have, in addition to that, the tent stakes, the paracord, and a fixed blade knife that's flipping sharp. I have two or three plastic bags. In the wintertime, it's really important to get yourself off of the ground or have insulating layers between you and the ground. Now, if I had enough time before the sun went down and I had the ability, I wasn't super injured or whatnot, I would actually make like a little cot from tree limbs and stuff. If I had that available around me to raise me up off the ground in a winter environment, and then just lay the sleeping bag on that, and that would probably be good because I would not be laying on the ground and I would not have conduction sucking the life literally out of me because of it. But if not, you need about 6 inches of fill material that would insulate leaves, whatever you can find, that once it's compressed, it's about 4 inches of insulation between you and the ground. And that's what these are for. These are thin. I will be getting 55-gallon drum liners or 45-gallon contractor bags, whatever I can in like at least 2 mil thickness to replace these with at some point. In my pack, I would carry a folding saw. This is not a silky saw. This saw costs $7 at Harbor Freight. I'm not trying to be a bushcrafter. Once again, this ain't a career. I just want to be able to cut some limbs and stuff like that so that I can make shelters, so that I can do whatever it is I need to do that requires that instead of carrying an axe with me. So that'll be in my kit, in my pack. This is a Tylenol, an empty Tylenol container, and it is stuffed as full as I could get it with cotton balls soaked in petroleum jelly. And I've got this whole bottle full of them, packed full. Okay, so there will be flipping fire if I can have anything to say about it. I won't be worried about trying to use this ferro rod or this. The first go-to that I'll have when we talk about fire is a lighter. If you look at some of the videos David Canterbury has put out, and there are others as well, there are a couple of military guys that have said the same thing over the years that I've watched, okay? They'll tell you that in a survival situation, they don't give a flip about this. They're looking for this, okay? And they're gonna have wet fire making capability with them of some kind, okay? Most of them, if they've got a school or anything like that, and most of them do, they got some kind of artificial tinder for wet fire situations. In other words, everything's wet, that kind of deal, but you need fire, okay? This is not the time to pretend you're Mr. Bushcrafter or Mr. Survivor Man or whatever. This is the time to survive. So that's always in my pocket. I got another one in my pack, okay? I also have one of the small magnesium fire starters with the little small ferro rod, okay? I've got matches in my pack. I've got several ways to get a fire going, because fire there's two things that'll save your butt more than anything else in the wintertime. It's insulation off the ground and fire, okay? Then we're talking about cover and stuff like that. The very, very first thing that you need to think of is fire and insulation off the ground, so that the conduction from the ground doesn't suck the heat right out of your body. If you do everything else but you forget conduction and you forget fire, you're probably going to die. This is just country boy talk. But I know for a fact that if I have fire and can keep off the snow and the cold ground, if I get a big enough fire going, I'm going to live. So anyway, these will all be in my pack along with spare cordage. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll this up into this sleeping bag. This sleeping bag, it has a bag that it fits in, but it doesn't fit in it with all this stuff in it. I don't know if I can roll it up to a size where it would. Okay, but I'm going to see if I can. But either way, this will be rolled up, and it will be strapped in some way to the bottom of that pack, and hopefully it won't be such an aggravation to me trying to strap it to the bottom of that pack every time I want to use it that I don't carry it. That's another thing to consider. This is a kit that I'm talking about for surviving overnight, and you know, if it's too much, you're probably not going to carry it. If I have to do too much crap to be able to carry it, I'm probably not going to carry it. So hopefully I will be able to figure out a way. Hopefully I can get this to fit in that pack and there'll be room enough in there. I doubt it. I'm gonna have to strap it to the bottom. So hopefully uh, within the next 5 or 6 months, I can get what I want is like a military 3-day pack that has straps that I can strap attach to it that will allow me to strap things onto the bottom, or a civilian version that does the same thing. So that'll be for me to decide if I can arrange it. But we're gonna roll this up now and see if it'll fit in here. If it doesn't, like I said, I'll strap it. So this is the pack rolled up. I don't believe that it will fit in here. Let's just try, just to see. Will this go on? And it might. I actually think we're going to stuff this in here. And I could leave this off. This is going to be strapped to the bottom of my pack. It's going to, when I set the pack down, it's going to touch whatever I set it down on, that kind of thing. So if I can get it in this, it's an extra layer of protection for my bedding. It will also help to keep it drier, that kind of thing. So I don't see a downside doing this. I think we're tight. What I'm going to do with this, because I don't want it dangling all over the place, is I'm going to stuff that up in there like that. Trying to get these items in here and roll it up tight with all the other layers in it wasn't working. And so I took them out and they will just go in the regular pack somewhere. It doesn't matter. This will probably never ever be with me when this is not. So as long as I have all the elements of fire and shelter, there are also elements of fire and shelter that don't go in here that stay in this pack anyway, so I really don't see the point of worrying about it. But yeah, they did not go because they did not fit. That's perfectly fine. They will go in here. So in here I have, it's wrapped up in paper, but it's one, or in a handkerchief actually. But this is one of those Sark Trail backpacking kind of stoves. It's a 4-in-1. And I'll carry gas with me for preparing meals. That's another thing that has to go in this pack. There's a lot that has to go in as to whether or not I will be able to put them all in there. Yeah, that's not going to go like that. Let's see. Let's do the paracord. Actually, With my knife, go in there and the fire starter, the tent stakes, and this. Those will go in there. And I'm going to put my ferro rod up, my other ferro rod in here as well. That will probably more than likely be on my person if I'm in the woods. And fire starter. Those will all fit in there just fine. This zipper compartment will be for maps. So, that kind of thing. But for right now, I'm going to stick my cordage, my saw, and my knife in there. So, I mean, and then I have the pack. I have a little divider here that I can put. I think this is probably meant for a laptop. We'll use it for something else. But yeah. So I'm building this. I've got plenty of room for food and things of that nature in there. Maybe change of clothes or something like that. Signaling stuff, that kind of thing. Compass will be on my person, not left in a pack. That kind of deal. So, I mean, I'm just trying to figure out a way to do something as light as possible, but still be able to get the job done. And this pack may evolve the longer that I use it. I'm hoping that I will get a larger pack at some point. So, but thanks for watching. I hope that was clear as mud, and I'll talk to you later.